I thought too. Like, where's that stuff? So, all right, folks, technically we are live. I'm going to verify though. It's been a technology fun-filled morning here at the Slavic House. So thanks for being so patient, Noah. Let's see what we got going here. Too, like, where's that stuff? Okay, there we go. It looks like we actually got something going here today. Wow. Thanks everybody for your patience. We're trying to orchestrate a lot of things, some screen shares, Instagram, Facebook, Noah Cantor from Vermont. So we'll get Instagram going again. Okay, so again, for the people who didn't catch the first test broadcast here, this is the Ask a Painter live show. This is episode 250. It's a special one. I put out the call for a possible topic for this show. Noah answered in quick time with a very thoughtful email about a thought experiment that he thought would be worthy, which is the perfect 5-person painting company. So that's what we're going to focus on today. And then just like Noah's last appearance on the show, I'm just going to let him lead the show because he's an insanely thoughtful dude. And yeah, it's going to be a fun show today. So Noah Cantor, he owns Nth Degree Painting. He's from Vermont, and he has one of my favorite podcasts, Advice from a Young Tradesman. And yeah, tell us what advice from a young tradesman is, Noah. You can do it way better than I can.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, if you followed the whole way, it's been a lot of things. But if I could concisely define what it's all about now, it's about answering the calls for who are the young people entering the skilled trades and taking them seriously, and what are they thinking? What are they going through as they assess this industry, build businesses, this and that. So this is basically my response, is just a completely open answer of whatever I'm doing and thinking about as I build it.
So, yeah, and what I like is you're going through the typical hero's journey of people who come into the trades. You have deep thoughts about craft, about business, about, I mean, it leads you to larger thoughts too. And what I like is it's happening in real time when you listen to your podcast. So I would urge you guys, I would urge you to put out more of them, Noah, but I know how much work goes into them. But I would urge everybody else to find Advice from a Young Tradesman and seriously listen to it, because you're basically, you know, every thought you've ever had about your business and the trade, he's having publicly there. And it's insanely satisfying to listen to. So, all right, I think what we'll do is, Noah, we're just going to hop right into it here. You gave me the challenge, come up with the perfect 5-person painting company. I know you have a lot of thoughts too, and I will do a quick screen share, hoping that we don't fold the internet and the space-time continuum on itself here. So I prepared a very short PowerPoint presentation as a way to kicking it off. So this is the perfect 5-person painting company. And this is sort of what I came up with, which was obviously we'll talk about you and your business. So Noah would obviously be the head of this. And I like my org charts upside down because it shows a support sort of model where the leaders, the owners and everything else support the people under them in order to accomplish our missions. And basically, I mean, the simplest form, you got 2 people who know a little bit more than 2 other people. And you have 2 people who can sort of lead jobs, and you have 2 people who are training to be able to lead jobs. Thoughts, arguments, other things, Noah? This is pretty straightforward.
It sure is. And I just want to say before we go on, I so appreciate you taking this up. I think this is such a cool thing to think about because of how often people at my level say they want a certain size painting company without knowing the implications of each level at all. Because we're down here. We can't know what each level means, the implications of it. So this is such a useful thought experiment. So I think we can stop BSing ourselves, quite honestly. Because I know I've said it. I know nothing about the implications. So thank you for doing this. I love this. Let's keep going.
Yeah. So what's interesting, the biggest thing for me is like, there's always this thing like as visionaries, and that is a kind of gross word at some point when you talk about yourself or other people around you. But honestly, I'm a believer in sort of the traction model of business, where at the head of every very successful business, there's somebody who does a little more vision and somebody who does a little more integrating. There's the visionary who comes up with what should we do? And then the integrator actually takes that and gets the traction to the ground and actually gets something done. And a lot of times we get stuck in this problem solution thing. And for me, it's more like, I love action steps and real things. So for me, it's like, if you want a 20-person painting company, what the thing that I'm most interested in is, what do you do tomorrow to do that? Not, oh, I can't imagine a life like that. Here's what your life's going to be with 20. It's like, fine, you get there, but that's the 3-year plan. What happened tomorrow? So this is sort of what we're grounded in right now, which is good. You want to manage painters. You don't necessarily want to paint every day, or at least you want the option to. Today, this whole discussion is about, what do you do today to do that? So yes. So like everything else, there's some assumptions here. I am a firm believer that growing a paint business is not necessarily hiring people. It's all the things you do to set the groundwork to hire people. And I've shared this document with lots of people, how to professionalize your business, or I've even titled it, What to Do Before You Hire. And before you take on these 4 people, obviously, Noah, we're under the base of, like, we are a legal business entity. We have filed with the state. We have a separate business checking account. We are licensed for every municipality that we have. The next big thing for me is, you have a proven process. Like, there's always going to be questions in the coding world, but what's really important is that you know how to paint. And whatever you sell to your clients, you're actually delivering 99% accurately. So if you start bringing people into a business that doesn't quite know what primer to put on golden oak lacquered cabinets, you're going to run into so many headaches. So solve the proven process thing first. Know how to paint. You should generally know how to estimate and get jobs in too, because again, you don't want to add people into your business without, having some way of generating business. Now, in our market right now, residential repaint sort of stuff, the market is so strong. I would say, there's way more work than we can handle. So this is not a very critical step. The work will be, I can guarantee you this, the work will be there. And every step of the way for me, from 0 to X now, the work has always been there. And that's never been the problem. Right now, it's the production. So you should have some deliverables and standards too. When you take somebody on, there should be a job description. They should know what they have to do to get a raise or to get fired. I would also argue too that you need a job cost so you can hold them accountable. You need to figure out if these jobs are even profitable. That will give you that feedback loop of informing your estimating, if you need to raise or lower your prices, and also informing your employees if they're doing good or bad. Also, you should have some sort of goal tracking, and this is super easy. We'll get into that later, but at this point, we assume that this stuff is pretty much done. Like, this is never going to be perfect, but you should at least have some grasp. These should not all be question marks for you. Then we get into team development. So sorry, that was a long-winded thing, Noah. You have thoughts?
No,
yes.
Good. Yeah. This is what we're all here for.
All right. So basically, this is it right here. Once you've laid the groundwork for that, I've been hearing lots of people that I look up to in this industry and others start to referring to little business units as pods. I've always called them silos in my company. That's probably not a great sort of thing, but pods are something that I keep hearing more and more of. It seems to be the lingo of the day. So pod is just a unit that you can replicate over and over in a business. Something like that. Think about like a Subway sandwich store. There's a store manager, an assistant store manager, and probably 22 employees that work there. And there's a maintenance person. That is a pod. Just replicate that over and over as a unit. So the first thing I would do, again, what the most interesting thing is, what do you do day one? Well, I would hire 2 people. And it costs just as much money to train 1 as it does to train 2, if you think about your own time. And in looking back, over the course of my business, I'm to the point now where I would rather train 4 than train 2, because honestly, it's one of those things, we're going to have attrition in this business, in this trade. And I would much rather suss that out early and have some people fall off before they get to the main company. So I would hire at least 2 people and basically I would work with them for 3 months on every job. And this is something I've done before many, many times over. When I built my business, for the first 10 employees, I hired 2 people at a time and hand trained them just to the point where they were autonomous. And then I found the next 2. So this is something that's infinitely doable if you know what you're doing. So hire 2, and basically for the first 3 months, you're on projects with oversight. So think about an exterior of a house, all kind of work together and then say, hey, I'll finish up this side. Why don't you guys go start the other side? And you kind of work together so they're within eyesight so you can correct and mentor and things. Basically then at 6 months, they can kind of get their own projects going. I mean, you'll be there to set it up. You'll give them the scope of the project. This is the code. This is the codings. This is our process. You guys get going. Maybe do the job, check in once in a while. You might be there with them. You may be doing something else, but then you close it out together as well. So there's sort of like high coaching, you know, and then there's a little less coaching. And then the goal is to get these people self-directed. At 6 months, honestly, it depends on how aggressive you want to be. Once you can set them up and they can sort of do a job by themselves and you can close it out, at the 6 month mark, I would hire pod 2. I would get 2 more people in there. And then basically the same thing. So you have a sort of a sweeping sort of range of people's experiences. And then you can spend time with pod 2, set up pod 1, check in with them, but then you can be working hand in hand with pod 2. And then after that, again, you can't stop. So I would always say 6 months with pod 1, 6 months with pod 2, that's an accumulated 12 months total. I would be looking at the farm team. I would always be putting those ads out there, looking for those little unicorns that maybe have a little experience, but are underappreciated. But if you want a 5-person painting company, don't ever stop at 4 painters. Like you always have to be churning and making sure that you're looking for your farm team. Okay, and this is where the rubber hits the road too. So again, great. Oh, we're just going to hire 4 people. Everything is going to work great. This is where you actually have to say what needs to happen in order for that to go down. So the way I theorize it is the easiest way to do that is for the owner to still basically do everything, but just take a little bit of the painting off of the shoulders of the people around them. So basically, if Noah, this was your company, some industry standards are, a 50% success ratio with your estimates. So if you do 100 estimates, if you can close 50, that usually feels good. It feels bad to lose 50% of your estimates, but honestly, that's sort of a industry benchmark. So basically, in the course of a year, you're going to have to do about 293 estimates, which sounds like a lot, except there are 261 working days in a year. So basically, like 1 estimate a day, and that's not daunting at all, give or take. You sell 50% of them. That means you're going to do 146 jobs. If you do an average job size of about $3,000, you will hit that revenue mark there. Now, the upside of a company like this is super lean, no overhead, and you can really drive a high profit. The downside is it's all reliant on you. So if you leave on a 2-week vacation, this gets frictiony a lot, and you really can't disconnect from the business. So you still will need to schedule everything. You'll have to order materials. You have to set up a job. You have to close it out. And probably the most time-consuming thing from experience is holding people accountable. It's just one of those things, especially when we're dragging decent human beings into the trades that don't have a wealth of knowledge of manual labor and things. So I want to call it confrontation, but it's really accountability. Confrontation sounds negative, but you really do need, I would say right now, 75% of my time is accountability every week. And I think that should be about the same for people there. So if something doesn't get done, or if a mistake is made or something else, it's using it as a learning moment to then increase the sort of, competency of the company. So, and then in the end, I just basically use my industry benchmark template to say, well, what does this actually look like? I mean, you make $1 million, do you lose your tail? I theorize that, a painter should make about $100,000 to $110,000 of revenue for the business a year to cover all the expenses. And if you keep material and the labor of those people to an industry benchmark, I truly believe that if you pay yourself $30,000, $31,000 a year, you can probably take home a net profit of about 100 to 110 grand a year. Combined owner's compensation, about 140 grand a year. And this is, again, best case scenario, everything going right, people producing like they should, not missing work, things like that. So this is just my first shot across the bow. I don't know many people that do this successfully, consistently for a long time. And I think the big friction point is humans, you know?
Mhm. Okay, yeah, this is fascinating. Lot of things, lot of things to say, a lot of rabbit holes we can go down to. No particular order. One thing I wonder about this is there's not room for employee growth here, and I wonder how big of a deal you think that is.
Well, I think it's huge. And there's two growth models, which is like I'm a painter and making more money is one way of growing. Growing into a management position, another thing. So again, if you take this to its farthest extent, me and my father were once a painting business. And when I was painting with him, again, you have this dream of like, hey, I'm going to be a manager, I'm going to be an owner, I'm going to be a leader. And then you start looking around, you're saying, wait a second, it's just me painting. If I stop painting, there's nobody to manage. So there is the truth about a small painting company is that it can be intimate, it can be good, but there is a limited amount of growth. We had Long Tall Parker, who actually just got deployed for the military. He worked for me for 4 summers as a seasonal employee through a school and college. He got a business degree, and then he came back to the company as our head trainer, part of the leadership team, because we have a position available in my company like that. And he has a bachelor's degree in business. I'm not sure if he would have came back to scrape houses in the summer again. I mean, I'm sure he would have been interested in it, but I'm sure he'd be more interested in a different position that can utilize his skills. So that is a true limiting factor of a small business.
Yeah, and then say you get to this level, you realize that problem. There's a whole nother plateau that you need to reach before you can address that because you need more painters in the field to support those more managerial positions because that just turns into overhead, right? So I could see you thinking that this is a nice endpoint and then realizing it isn't, which maybe is why we don't hear a ton of success stories from this stage, even though by those numbers, that looks sweet. Like that looks like a sweet little setup there.
Yeah, and no, if I'm being honest, this is great. Most paint business owners in the United States take home $43,000 a year. Most people in my business that are employed by me make more than that, and they don't have any of the stress that you and I do. So this done right is great, but it relies on a lot of consistency and grit from the owner. Yeah, it's people. Yeah, I don't. So many thoughts. No, yes. So the next plateau. Yes, if you the first thought for many people is, well, good, we'll just hire an admin. And then, that person costs 40 to 45K a year. And then, you have to supply enough work for them. I would theorize that having been through this phase many times, doing one estimate a day and lining up the equivalent of, if you do 146 jobs sold, I mean, basically lining up 3 jobs a week, that's all you have to do. To me, that's infinitely doable by one business owner. And I still don't have an admin in my company, and we got 25 people. It just seems like there's, I know people do their businesses differently, but it's like some of that stuff just gets spread out over the team, and people unnecessarily laden themselves with overhead sometimes and then can't figure out why.
Mm-hmm. This net profit number 2, 25%. I've seen you do other thought experiments where it is much lower. Is this just the assumption based on a small, low overhead, nimble company? There's just not a whole lot of expenses. Is that what's going on there?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, honestly, when the line of demarcation for like a single person painting company should take home half of the money they make. So if it's just me, or if it's just you, if you make $100,000, if you create $100,000, if you paint $100,000 worth of work, you should put about 50 of that in your pocket, because there's basically no expenses besides paint and a little bit of admin, insurance, and things like that. As you ramp up employees, I like the 5 thing because I feel like you should take home the net profit, the actual owner's pay for one person, it should probably be 50%, give or take. For 5 people, I'm theorizing it could be 25% if you're very competent. When you get to 10 painters, really you're dancing at that 10 to 15%, give or take. So it's and after 10, that seems to be a good number. I know the net profit gets harder and harder to chase the more employees you have, but I have lots of examples of people that run $5 or $6 million companies that can do between 15 and 20%, like honest to goodness, true net profit. So it just depends on the competency of the owner. But yes, that net profit will go down because of the overhead layers you have to put in.
Mm-hmm. And I want to note the owner's pay too, and just have you confirm my thinking about this. This was not intuitive to me like this time last year when I was watching you start to do these kinds of shows. Now, why is it 30 grand there? And then what's the compensation down there? And we are in S Corp land here, right? Where you are an employer of your own business. And as I've learned in setting up my own S Corp, 30 grand seems to be that sweet spot where your incidence of auditing, if you pay that, just starts to go down a little bit. That's what my accountant recommended for Noah to take as a W-2 employee of nth degree painting. And then the rest is a dividend. So that's correct, right? You 30,000 wasn't an accident there?
No, and again, these are numbers that are malleable. So I know everybody does it different. And honestly, depending on the accountant you talk to, these will change, not good or bad, but either way, that's why I put the owner's compensation at the bottom, because you can pay yourself more on a W-2 wage and take less dividends. The owner compensation at the end of this should still be the same. And you're exactly right, Noah. One of the, maybe only 2 or 3 years ago, maybe only 2 years ago, I became my own W-2 employee. And before, the fallacy that people can get into this is that when you're a single person painting company and you don't pay yourself a wage, you think every dollar that's left in your checking account is pure profit. It's not, because the thought experiment would go, if you weren't painting, you would have to pay somebody to paint. People would not paint for you for free. So what you have to do is assign yourself some sort of cost for your own labor, and that's very difficult. When in question, I've told people to put $25 or $30 an hour as this. Yep. What I get from accountants and what I get from people across the industry is that if you run $1 million painting business and you pay yourself between $60,000 and $80,000 a year to run that business in an owner's W-2 wage, that is a very safe, accepted number. So the theory is here, the ratio between W-2 wages and dividends. And the reason we separate it out, like, why don't you just pay yourself a paycheck for the whole amount? W-2 wages are taxed a lot more than dividend wages, to the point where you want to maximize that for tax advantages. So you want to go W-2 as low as possible, dividend as high as possible. But just like you said, if you pay yourself $5 to run a painting company and take 170 grand in dividends, you're getting audited now. So you have to keep that ratio in order. So yes, that's how we theorize that. But as businesses get bigger, I've always kept it at about 7% of total revenue. Again, this is malleable. You can make an argument for or against.
Yeah, this is cool. I also want to put out a call too. If you have one of like in your mind, ideal 5-person painting company, reach out. Like, let's do a case study. I want to talk to you. I just want more people sharing what they think is brilliant at each level. Right now, we only have a thought experiment of this by Nick Slavik, who's been at that phase and is now above it. But like, if you have it in real time, let's talk. I am super curious.
And this is Noah, this is interesting because this is with 4 painters, and how I imagine Noah's life in this is probably like half field work and half a day sort of coordinating admin, production, sales sort of thing. There's no reason. Like, I ran a version of this painting company that between 4 and 6 in the morning, I used to do all the things I needed to do. I got in the field from 6 to 4 and produced at a high rate. You can add another 150, 180,000 to this just like that, if you're willing to give up mornings and evenings. I would then do estimates in the evening. So you can, at this stage of the business, you have a trump card, and it's called your own labor, because you have to pay yourself something. But honestly, if cash is getting a little short, you can put in a day or two of painting, bring in some revenue. It's like a little shot in the arm of adrenaline.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's what's attractive about this model for people like me who are like, I don't want to be off the brush. I still enjoy a lot of the day to day of this, but I want to lay the groundwork where if that becomes important, I don't have to rush and do it while I'm way too busy or there's a kid or I have an injury or something. Like, let's do this now while I have the time and it doesn't feel urgent, you know? But it is attractive to say, yeah, do some estimates, do a couple days on. Like the flexibility sounds nice.
Well, and what's interesting though is that the longer I do this, and again, it's what I like is actual action steps. And for years and years and years, I've preached this is a freedom machine, what we're doing here, but never connected it to an actual like, okay, what does actually freedom look like? You know, and we always feel like it's this nebulous sort of thing. And for some people, it's on a beach with a blue drink, not thinking about their business, getting passive income.
Mm-hmm.
Freedom to me, and for most other people in this trade who truly love the craft and the business, freedom really is the ability to have the choice to do it or not. And then you do with that what you want. Like on a Friday, you know, because my company works a 4-day work week. On a Friday, I could do nothing. I could sleep till noon. I could wander around. I could blue drink it over on my patio here. Or I can get up and do all the fun spreadsheets, the vision stuff, the 1 to 3 to 5 year plan. Having the choice to do or not do that makes work more fun. If you're forced to do it, you don't think about it the same way. I was forced between 10 and 18 to work in a painting business and I hated it. I get infinite delight when I can choose to do it now.
Yeah. And there is freedom at my level as well, but it's riskier. Single point of failure. Like the freedom I get is finishing a job on a Thursday, not booking one on a Friday and going canoeing and just laying on an island in the sun. That's a version of freedom, but it's propped up on less substantial business back end, you know? So and then there's a huge gap of not much freedom in between those things when you just got to grind and put together what you've done. So big spectrum of freedom here.
Yeah, exactly. And that's different for everybody else. Some people like, you know what? I don't like the headache. I'm just going to be a single person painter the rest of my life. That's not good or bad. That's just, if that makes you the happiest, I would absolutely do that.
Mm-hmm. So we started to segue into something I wanted to bring to you, but it wouldn't be kind of closing this one out. Do you have anything else to say on this one? Pros or cons, thoughts?
No, I like this a lot. And again, to be honest with people, we should take the logical next step, which is most people consider a successful business something that can run with or without you, which is a self-evident state that it's sellable. I would argue that you have to have a very large machine, especially in the trades, for it to be sellable. The test whether something is like a 5-person painting company, you might find somebody who could buy you, but I would never buy a 5-person painting company because it's all reliant on the owner and its employees. If that owner said, "Hey, this guy's giving me $100,000 for this painting business, you guys can all scram. What did you just buy? You didn't buy a thing. Those employees leave." Arguably, if you have pods, if you have a replicable business unit where the owner can stop working in the business and the business perpetuates by itself, maybe with a little bit of accountability, technically you have something sellable, but that has to be a fairly large sort of thing because now you need all that overhead in there. So like you said, it's a ramping up where I would argue you may need to have 20 to 25 employees before you actually have something that would be considered sellable in the trades. And even that would be, it's not an easy thing.
Yeah. I'm doing something in about 2 weeks that I think is going to be fascinating, which is I am going to go and embed myself with an owner of a painting business in Southern Vermont that he purchased. This guy is a business guy. He knows very little about the trade of the craft. And I am embedding myself with him and shadowing him for a day to see what a sellable painting business looks like after the sale. And I'm fascinated to see that. I've never seen what that looks like in person. So I can't wait. I can't wait for that.
That's interesting. And I'm sure there's going to be some follow-up and some things from you. I would love to hear that as well too.
I'm going to have an audio recorder on all day and I'm sure I'm going to have a whole lot of thoughts to share after.
That's awesome, man. All right. So I think I will let you lead the conversation from here, Noah.
Okay. At first, when we were kind of talking about this idea a while ago, I thought I was gonna bring my version of my like S corp cash flow spreadsheets and this and that, and then I just like looked at yours and I was like, I'm not gonna top that. So I'm bringing you qualitative data. I'm bringing you anecdotes based on me following basically every step you laid out in last year's Ask a Painters. And yeah, I just want to bring some results to the table because I don't know, I don't hear those often. I think it could be interesting just to share what you've created on my end. So as we
I
start
love
talking
that,
about,
man.
yeah, it didn't make sense to me this time last year why I would, being mostly solo, transition my job costing methods from just big number, less materials divided by my hours, Noah's hourly. That was my metric. I tracked it. I was like, why would I pretend that I'm an employee of my own company? Why would I do this? Margins don't apply to me, right? As I listened more, I learned, like, it started to make sense. It started to click, and I learned the why. I'm fully in that system now where I am an employee of my own business, S Corp, this and that, it's set up. And I want to talk about the mental shifts that have come with that different tracking that I didn't expect. It turns out, at least for me, that owner's hourly benchmark that I was tracking, it didn't translate into action. It didn't translate into me changing my behavior in little ways on jobs. I would look at the end of a job and go, good or bad or whatever, and then just go about my day and do the next one. A thing that happened a few weeks ago, I genuinely think this is like going to be a before and an after kind of thing for me, is I had a basic, call it a cabinetry job. It was a couple bureaus in a bedroom. Nice house, fine. Bid it. In between bidding it and doing it, you know, everyone's talking about the Fine Paints Uni Primer, and I get the new Titan 655 sprayer, and Noah's craftsman mind starts going, oh yeah, okay, I'm gonna upgrade her to Eco Satin. I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. I order a couple liters of the new Uni Primer. I do some adhesion tests with it. It didn't do as well as Cover Stain, not even close. It didn't do the stain blocking I hoped. I was going over cherry. So I'm in for $200 and 4 liters of primer that isn't as good as Cover Stain in those tests. I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, and then I'm like, what do I do here? Like, do I keep going down that hole? Do I order the Eco Satin? Do I blow the materials budget out? And I was like, no, I have a way to assess this now. I know that this job is profitable at this materials cost and this many hours. I looked at what the extra materials would be. It was over 15%. And then I was like, I know myself. If I'm using these higher caliber coatings, I'm doing more prep. I'm going to obsess a lot more. And I canned it. It turned into a Cover Stain and a ScuffX job, and it went totally fine. And that might sound like a tiny little thing, but I had never looked at a job plan and a budget before and made decisions like that based on those numbers and the desired margins. And that is what that thinking does. Like, that is, it all just crystallized. And on that job, I was like, oh, I made a decision based on numbers instead of my craftsman ego. And that is what that does. And to me, that felt powerful and worth noting.
And again, this is not, and I love what you're saying, because it gives you the information to make an informed decision. Another really good decision, Noah, would have been Craftsman rabbit hole. If we're going to go down that, you could say, listen, you know the path now. You know Cover Stain and ScuffX is going to work and it will be profitable. But also, I operate under the earn or learn. You know what? You may want to go down that and check every box, fill in every question you have about that whole FPE stuff. And sometimes it's good to say, you know what? If Uniprimer didn't do this, let's get the 3 other primers from FPE. Let's use them all. Let's get this data point. And then from here on out, we're never going to go down this rabbit hole again. So for me, this is never, and I know we agree on this. This is never an argument for screw it, do the easy thing. This is like, no, This is data plus feelings. The feeling is, oh, rabbit hole, what are we going to do? I'm going to spiral out of control. It's like, no, we have two paths we can go down here. Having that choice and making a conscious thing, knowing you're going to get some benefit out of each one is good. I like that a lot.
Yep. And another big shift I realized is even when I had summer employees, I was still doing the Noah's hourly rate is the only metric. Those hourly employees existed to make me faster. I knew they were going to be around for 3-4 months. I wasn't thinking about turning them into independent producers. So it was clean that, mask that, do this, run that, set that up. My hourly skyrocketed because of them, because I'm just showing up and spraying. But they were an expense, just like materials. You know, with the labor burden, they were $23 an hour. My hourly was still the king thing. This new way of thinking about it, it's less, it's like the solar system models, right? We used to be the center of the universe, now the sun is. I used to be the only important metric. And now the holistic job where I'm a part of it is the metric. The job is costed, not Noah's performance at the expense of these poor college kids that I'm bossing around. And it's like, I can just see all these gears that were like bound up with that one way of tracking numbers just get freed up, and they're spinning different ways. And again, this might sound crazy obvious, but like, this is what I do. I share my process. And that is what job costing has done for me. Employees are no longer just things to make me faster. The challenge for me this year, I have my first full-time person coming on next month, like for good. She quit a job for this, is getting past that 3 or 4 month mark and turning her into an actual producer like you think about employees, where she's not making me faster. That's not her job. My job is to empower her to create revenue. And I'm set up to track that now.
So what's interesting too is that for years and years, the data plus feeling things is so important, because even when you have the data, you need to attach it to a feeling so you know what to do. Because if we just say, you know, your contribution margin should be 37.5%, it's like, okay, fine. What does that look like? Like, what is that? Like, I need to attach that to a job, a feeling, a happy client, a bad experience, something like that. For years and years and years, my job costing was revenue per hour. That's how I rated my jobs. And revenue per hour is fine. It's like a indicator, but it's actually a pretty poor indicator. So when you're tracking somebody's individual performance, so I actually example. So I actually used to get a little bit angry with some of my people 5 years ago when the revenue per hour from a job wasn't that good. Like, you know, the industry standard is 55. If it was 50 or 45 or 40, I'd be a little angry. But the problem is revenue per hour is a movable target, because the same amount of hours will get put on a job. And if you take somebody who's very highly paid and put it on it, the revenue per hour may be very low, but the actual job costing, the percentage of the labor, is actually really good. Likewise, you know, the theory goes on the other end of it. If you have 2 apprentices getting paid $17 an hour and they do a project, but it takes them 10, 20 more hours, they might actually, on a profitability scale, perform better than 2 craftspeople, because the craftspeople cost a lot more. So in the end, the final arbiter, the greatest thing, is tracking percentage of labor. And if we believe the benchmarks, if you can keep labor to 40%, that is the magic number of all painting companies. If you can track that, that's good. And that, Noah, is exactly why you and I assign ourselves some sort of monetary value, because otherwise all we have is revenue per hour. So I ran my business for lots of years off revenue per hour, and it took me about a year to make the conversion to gross profit, which is the 40% labor, 15% material. Over the course of that year, it took me all those repetitions to attach a feeling to it. I can feel right now a 40 GP, or excuse me, a 40 labor job. You just know, like, it's going well. There's certain indicators, and now you can almost predict, based on who's on a job, what they're doing, and how the first day goes, what the GP on a job is going to be.
I am so glad to hear that also took you a year to fully wrap your mind around it. I thought I was just moving really slowly. But no, it
Well, you know
turns
what's
into
really interesting
action.
is that so I find myself there are something I've been really recently interested in is a feedback loop, and it gets brought up lots of places. And over the last couple of weeks, it got mentioned in a way that actually attached a feeling to it. And now I realize like people who are the most successful at most things in life create a feedback loop, act on the feedback loop, and continuously keep going on the feedback loop. So basically, this is the stereotypical I fail all the time, but I learn from it and I change really quickly. And honestly, my feedback loop is there. It's intentional. It's not as fast as I'd like it to be. But compared to the industry, I think I probably act on that feedback loop a little quicker than most people. But there are people that do this daily. And for me, it's sort of like weekly, monthly, quarterly. So that's something that I'm trying to personally improve. But having that feedback loop, just like you said, you sit down at the end of a job, you figure out that, you know, your feedback loop for that fine paints a Europe job was the same thing. Instantly, you had some data. How do you make the choice? And then what do you do with it in the future? Because if every time you go to do a cabinet job, you start with that same thing with the hopes of a different result, that is not acting on your feedback loop very well. And you're just going to keep iterating over and over in that thing and not improving.
Right. That was another big takeaway of that one too. Like I thought that uni primer might have been that unicorn water-based primer that is perfect on adhesion and stain blocking and all that everyone has been looking for. It's not, and that's fine. To your point, I'm done iterating with that. My cabinet bidding process is, I'm sorry, the first day is going to be very stinky. There's no way around it. Like I kept trying to dance around that reality and use sticks, and no, it's like it's just going to smell really bad. That's the final answer. That's also a result of this. So.
Yeah. Agreed. And you know what, honestly, if our goal is to make happy clients and keep this going, yeah, we want magical things to happen. But if they don't, we're gonna give people what we promised them. And it doesn't really matter what you promise them, as long as you promise it and do it. That seems like a really good combination.
Yeah. I would love your thoughts on that thing I mentioned. I'm gonna have to have a transition somewhere in the midsummer of creating an independent producer rather than a runner for Noah. This might just happen organically. It might not be a thing that it might just happen in my shoulder to shoulder training. But do you remember that experience for you of taking people past that point where they all of a sudden can produce independently?
Yes, and the sad reality, no Cantor, is that it's not that much up to you. It's based on people's, you know, because we disprofile everybody who comes in the company. There is a clear delineation between fast learners and slower learners. Again, not a judgment. We get benefits out of every personality profile has a certain benefit in the company. People who have a more high D personality, probably more like you or me, pick things up very quickly and make up for a lot of stuff with grit and are problem solvers and think on their feet and are sort of tappy toe, nervous, itchy, you know, just like, come on, let's just go sort of thing. We have lots of examples of summer help that comes here where they do share that personality type with me, and you throw a 70-page laminated SOP at them, they're like, I get it, and they go for the whole summer and kind of work independently. There are people who have that more sort of like introspective, compliant sort of mindset where it takes a long time to learn it, but when they learn it, it's like flawless. So it's one of those things where it's like with each personality type, you're going to get, and again, it's not good or bad. Painting business owners like us have a tendency to only look for the people that don't take a lot of inputs and give us a lot of outputs. And that's not great. Some of the most awesome people in my company are the people who have taken the longest to learn. And in the end, it just takes them longer to do that, to feel comfortable, to attach data plus feelings to something. And you have to be patient enough to mentor them through that to get there. So yeah, it's sadly, you can skew it in your favor by knowing what you're doing and being an awesome, happy boss who mentors them and shares the mission and accomplishes things with them. But in the end, I feel like it's 50-50. If they don't have that little internal motor, if they're not motivated by some sort of utilitarianism, they're either going to take longer to learn or they won't learn it at all and they'll stall out.
Well, that gives me a lot of hope. She is a killer. I've had her on part-time job sites and watched her pick things up insanely fast. So that's a good note. Follow up to that. When do you start tracking, recording, judging their output in your measurement way, the way you measure revenue per hour? Because week 1 and 2, they're on a job site learning. Are you gauging them that? Are their numbers wrapped up with the lead who's training them? How do you approach that?
Yeah, so we actually do this in Apprenticeship 2.0, which now we have our training facility. We have a mock kitchen and 2 mock bedrooms. We actually do a soft version of this, a mentory version of job costing for the people, which is basically goal setting. So when we teach people the wall painting sort of module, we walk through it once with them. We kind of show them the picture. We show them the outside of the Lego box and say, this is what it looks like. So now focus your brain. This is what it looks like. We do one iteration with them, hand to hand, shoulder to shoulder, showing, doing, walking through the whole thing. The next one is a little more just directed, where we say, okay, now here's what you're going to do. Remember, you've done this before. And now we start attaching times to it, which is a goal setting process. We say, listen, if the goal is to paint a bedroom and get it under budget, good gross profit is 5.5 hours. Here's what needs to happen with prep. And then we break down the prep steps. So you're going to tape this room. You got 25 minutes to tape this room. I'll check in with you in 20 minutes and see how you're going. That is technically kind of job costing, but in a safe mentory sort of way to kind of attach that goal to them. So that's what I do from day one. I would be there with this person on a job site. And, obviously, if you guys can do a simple bedroom together, I would always start you cutting, her rolling, and then maybe on the next one or the second coat, switch it, but mentoring the entire time, shoulder to shoulder. As soon as she has enough repetitions in, you'd be like, hey, you know what? We got it. Our next house, we got 4 rooms to do. You know what? I'm going to go get this room set up. You got a 5.5 hour budget. Let's just say prep should take 2 hours and 15 minutes. Here's the prep steps. You know what? I'm just going to check in on a little bit. If you got a question, I'm here for you, but let's just see what you can do. And every 15, 20 minutes, you check in to see how they're doing, correcting, mentoring. And then basically they're starting to attach something like that. And they still feel supported, but you're there as kind of the safety blanket. And then pretty soon, basically, I would say really at the 3-month mark, I really want people to be able to like autonomously paint walls. So I would say then on that theoretical project, hey, we got a 4-room project today. I'm going to go knock out 2. You go knock out 2. I'm here for you. Let me know what comes up. And then you sort of just check in. And that's the sort of thing where you don't specifically give the goal to say prep will take 2.25 hours, but in your head and you're checking in and you make a project plan with them to do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So it sounds like as soon as they are minimally able, start attaching tasks based on hours, based on the job costing, and see where they land. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've done tons of versions of this. In a iteration of this business 8 years ago, I used to not let people cut with a brush for their first winter because I didn't think I could trust them or couldn't do a good enough job as I could. That is the silliest thing that I've ever done or said or tried in my life. The next iteration was I didn't let them spray for their first year because I didn't think anybody could do it as well as me. Now on everybody's first day, they're spraying because I need to give more faith to these people. Everybody is way better than I give them credit for. And you need to give them that little nudge. But there's the craft nudge and there's the leadership nudge. Always push people in the craft. We had a group of apprentices start, I think 3 summers ago. Their first job was putting epoxy on a floor in a dog kennel. And we just made them, today we're doing epoxy. So good luck today. You're doing it under the guidance of this. Now, the worst thing you can do is push people into, give them a van full of tools. And on their 3rd day, say, here's an address. Go over there and paint this house. Call me if you need anything. That is being a horrible leader if somebody's not ready for it.
So I have another thought experiment. There are all these questions, though. Do you want to pause? We just keep spieling.
Yes. Why don't you, would you rather pick questions, Noah?
Oh, I feel like I have to scroll up here. I can't see the Instagram ones. Do you want to look at those and I'll look through the Facebook ones?
Got it, man.
Seth has several. Nick, what is your rate of pay for someone like Parker as a trainer?
Yeah. So again, this is going to vary depending on what market you're in. I know, and I got some data this last week that for areas of like Kentucky, Tennessee, pay rate for starting painters was like $9 or $10, and people who could basically be job foremen was like 18 to 20. And we basically start people in my company at the higher end of that. So when I give this number, it's going to vary wildly. So Parker, if I had to design this position, it would probably be different than what we did. Parker has been with me for 4 years. He's a super bright young guy. He's got lots of leadership abilities, and his pay was based on what I paid him before. And he had a slight pay raise for this and just different deliverables. But I would imagine that number one, you have to have somebody who knows what they're doing. I would imagine to create this position and hold somebody accountable to it, you would need to pay them between $20 and $25 an hour, because they would need to know your processes, because you cannot teach somebody a lot of this stuff without knowing it pretty well, or at least having some experience.
Another one from Seth: how much revenue one person painting companies? Like, I think if you're honed in, you're good at what you do, you're working a pretty full year in a reasonable market, 100, 150 is a reasonable range for gross sales.
Yep. I see. So again, I see lots of versions of this stuff. I see some painters bringing in 50 grand a year. There's versions where you make 180 to 220 a year. That's getting after it, 10 hours a day, breaking yourself every day. So it's really, again, the theme through this is it's depending on what does that motor look like inside that person. So,
John Milkovich, what motivates you to come to work every day? I need to be in motion. I'm just a human that has a lot of energy that I like to get out, and painting is a really good job for that. I'm a dynamic human.
Yeah, and I have been labeled as a Bolshevik in many outward experiences of my life. I did not fit in well with the Army. I did not fit in well with most regular employment things, because the rate at which people did things frustrated me. And again, stupid, ignorant young Nick would be like, well, I could just do it better. And in many cases, my grit got me through that. But now in this stage of life, intelligence has to be coupled with that. And it is a humbling experience. I would rather have the choice to do something or not to do something, and do it my way, because I would make an argument that I'm willing to put in all the extra work. So yeah, I like that. I like the creating, the building, the mentoring, and creating these jobs where people actually like what they do. And that's the whole leadership thing is really interesting to me now, because honestly, this craft is not that hard. And one person can go out there and kill it. Like, there were versions of this company where I was pulling in $70,000 to $80,000 a year, working by myself or just with one or two people like that. And that's awesome. That's great. That's easy. Leading people to accomplish your mission with you is infinitely difficult. And that's as difficult as this craft seems on day one. What primer, what process, this and that. I now view leadership as that thing. I'm new to leadership, and that's the thing that motivates me now. So.
Do you have any Instagram questions you want to go into?
No, Instagram's been quiet. Just lots of people watching, but not questions. So yeah.
Cool. All right. I feel confident in saying that this is a thought experiment you have never even thought of, and I want listener feedback.
Boy, here we go.
Your feedback. This is a super cool thing that I've gotten involved in. There is an organization in Vermont called the Green Mountain Club. They're basically stewards of the Appalachian Trail, Long Trail, all the shelters, privies, just everything. They do a lot of good stuff. A lot of these shelters, various ages, various degrees of remoteness. All of them have some sort of solid acrylic stain on them in some state of disrepair, and that has been deferred maintenance. And there are hundreds of these in the state. The GMC has made it a priority to get a maintenance plan together for that. and I'm a volunteer for this organization. So I am helping them create a basic like SOP field manual for doing backcountry shelter work without electricity or running water using crews of completely inexperienced volunteers. So I love this because, you and I have talked about not doing every crazy craftsman thing that we see could be done. And that's a thought experiment in itself of what am I doing that is, how much am I doing beyond that point of diminishing returns? The reason I like this is because we have constraints here that none of us would sign up for. If we got a lead that was like, hey, I have a house, but you have to hike this stuff in, it's 5 miles up a mountain, I don't have electricity or running water and the building's filthy, you'd be like, I'm sorry, I don't do that, right? So we have to, I am helping them create this plan for an insane set of constraints to be done by people with no skill at this, like DIY level. I love this though. So I love any basic thoughts. And then I have just specific things of how would you approach these tiny little nuanced challenges of maintaining these things? Anything you want to get into before?
So first question would be, obviously this is probably going to be on a trail. How far are some of these things? I mean, are they a couple minute walk, or are we going a day's hike in somewhere?
Some of them are an actual day's hike requiring an overnight journey. So you are hiking in everything you need, eat everything. A lot of them are up a mountain. At the closest, it might be a half a mile or a mile from the nearest parking area.
Yeah, I like that a lot. My mind goes in two ways always. And this is a way that I solve problems in my own business, which is, can I do nothing and get a pretty good result? Or what does the Rube Goldberg version of this, where you put all the effort, all the time, all the thinking, all the complexity into it? So for me, either you devise a backpack that gets rid of everything you don't need, because paint or stain is going to be the heavy thing, and you're going to have to pack that in. You make some sort of cart and you strip everything down to the point where it's like, I'll sleep under a tarp with no shelter and have, mountain house food. Or what I want to do is devise a all-terrain cart that you bring a generator and a paint sprayer and all the accoutrements of home and just make it into a thing. Either I want nothing or everything. That's where my mind wanders into this.
I think knowing the trails here, we got to go with the nothing route. No, unless a helicopter brings it, you're not getting a generator to 98% of these places. East Coast trails were mostly built by the CCC guys, and they were basically, these were salty guys. They went straight up the hardest part of the mountain with the stream running in it, with the roots and the rocks. So none of these trails are easy.
So, and there's obviously things that we're going to have to give up in a situation like this. So I've done things not like this, but I have also done work on a tropical island and in a Northwoods island. And there are things you do have to give up. And for me, a lot of it is like prep, because you're not going to drag a pressure washer, and there's not going to be a water source, and there's not going to be this and that. So basically you're going to have to dry prep these things. So I would bring the minimum of what you need for that. A very simple, tiny scraper, a very simple, tiny, maybe wire brush. You have a cleaning brush with you. And then honestly, my mind wanders to just mini roller and paintbrush and just getting after it like that. Just bring almost nothing, knowing that the most difficult part of this is going to be packing in stain. And so yes. I would not overburden myself.
I am thinking Purdy backpacks, and actually the rep that you sent my way and I are talking about those getting donated to this organization. So thank you for that. That'll be a cool element. And then large backpacking backpacks with all of the stain wrapped in towels, because I don't think stain fits in a Purdy backpack, but you get all the tools in there. How
exactly?
A lot of these are in.
Oh, go ahead.
So a lot of these are in kind of like dewy environments that don't breathe well, buried in the woods. Mildew's a thing. Have you ever messed with the wet it and forget it products? Because that's one thing I'll make a lot of exceptions here. I do not want to stain over mildew.
Yeah, so that's going to be and I know the environment, it's not dissimilar to the northern Minnesota thing, and you're even more coastal, so you may even get a little more of this. So now, what my mind goes to is, again, nothing or everything. Either I want to prep it and I want to do it really well, but something about a little bit of prep doesn't really interest me. So I might even say, and I have examples of this, but I would almost think of a project like this like a oil tanker sort of thing, where you basically every year or two, some dude ties a rope around his waist, gets on the outside, and applies some sort of wear coating to the outside of an oil tanker. What they're not doing is stripping all the paint off, or even getting a lot of the sea spray or anything else off. They're just like, listen, this is a thing. We're going to put a coat on, and it will wear away in the next 1 to 3 years, and we'll put another coat on. And in doing that, it's actually a really good process. And I've seen myself cabins in the Canadian wilderness that are maintained by people who aren't nearly as thoughtful as you and I. But what they do is every 3 to 5 years, they go up, they slap a coat of something on, and that wood is preserved forever. And you know what? We can point out, hey, it looks like you went over a little powdery mildew here, or it looks like there's a little bit of lichen on the back. You know what? Lesser of two evils. That wood is perfectly preserved, because the goal, I'm assuming, with preserving this wood is not to make it beautiful. It's to make it so you don't have to rebuild these things every once in a while.
Yeah. Yeah. And that gets to an interesting truth I've realized about the painting industry and paint, is that prep is wildly important, and we underestimate how good paint is a lot of the time and what it can do with very little of the prep that we hold so near and dear. Again, as we should, but those things are both true, and it's kind of weird to admit that.
No, and it's interesting because a lot of the things we do, Noah, if we go back to first principle reasoning, if we break this problem down to its minimal things and then build a solution from there, honestly, a lot of the things that are on my standard operating procedure are because the client asked us to do them. And some of them, I mean, aren't necessarily helping the longevity or the beauty of the job, but because it's a constant thing that they ask for, we do that. We know that applying a coat of stain to a deck without first brightening it is fine. If there's no dirt and there's no lichen on a deck and you put a coat of stain on, that's going to preserve it every bit as well as if you apply oxalic acid, brighten it, and sand it. Now, a client wants it to look a certain way. A look doesn't necessarily make the deck last longer. So when we've created a process of deck staining that appeals to the aesthetic demands of the client and not necessarily the maintenance and longevity of the deck. We would do something different if they just wanted their deck to say, do something to make this deck last forever. I say, good, get out the solid color stain. Let's give her hell, you know?
Mm-hmm. Totally. All right. Any other thoughts on that one? That's going to happen in May. I'm going to shoot a lot of video with that. That's going to be a weird, fun little thing to train that first batch of volunteers.
Tempting. I almost want to go volunteer with you. That sounds like something. I love this sort of stuff about the craft. Like I would seriously, we should maybe coordinate this. I could probably come out there and take the frame pack, and that would be actually a blast. Now, the only other thing that comes to my mind, Noah, is May be different in Vermont, but May in Minnesota is a tsunami, and we purposefully do not do decks in May here because we don't get 3 days where there's not rain. So we usually wait June, July, and August. So
sure.
Yeah, moisture would be an interesting thing up there.
I have told them we can plan on May, don't count on it. Vermont is weird. Sometimes May, you don't get a drop of rain. Sometimes you can't start an exterior season in earnest until mid-June. It's impossible to plan for.
Yeah.
But I have actually been badgering my Sherwin rep to get you out through that PCA talk thing that's been advertised. So we can line that up. You get flown out, do a master's class. We get up the mountain and do that. That would be a lot of fun.
I'm feeling like this is the most exclusive master's class ever, where we have to hike a day into the woods to stain a cabin and get the master's class and hike a day out. That is very interesting to me.
These volunteers wouldn't even know what they had. They, yeah,
No, listen, you
that
will
would
keep
be
me informed because that is a very interesting project to me.
awesome. What product would you use for the trail cabins? There, based on what I've seen, it's all some sort of acrylic solid stain. Some of it seemed to be applied really well to like nice board and batten, and like they clearly prepped it well. It's in the wood. Sometimes it's on Lincoln log type of old thing that clearly had mill glaze and gray wood fibers. It's barely sticking. So each shelter is completely different.
Yep. I like that. Let's see. John, we have a lot of momentum with our network and referral leads. So we're in desperate need of more organization. We have one full-time, one part-time, and taking on more part-time team members. What are the most critical areas that need to be organized first in order to scale and complete all this work in a timely way? John, basically all the things we talked about in, so let's see if we look back to this. The document, how to professionalize your business, that I readily share with people. And you can certainly email me and get one of these, but basically that is the sort of entrance fee into running a smooth sort of less stress business. There's just basic things you need to do. And a lot of it is outlined here in this thing of, having clear deliverables, having standard operating procedures, training people for the standard operating procedures. So then you can hold them accountable. So then you can deliver what you want to the client. So that's typically like, now there is ways, like this is the way to professionally do it. There is a way where you can just grit through it as well too. And I've done both. Gritting through is great. You don't have to have all this stuff written down, but you have to be the one to verbally hold people accountable and do all this stuff yourself every day. And if you do not do it, it all falls apart. So, John, I would say that if you need any guidance with this stuff, let me or Noah know. But otherwise, that would be the path I would take to this stuff. Noah, anything to add to that one?
No.
Nice. All right. Well, Noah, what else you got, man? I've kept you at least an hour here. I don't want to, you got anything else for the good of the show?
Hey, I mean, I could probably go all day, but that is what I had prepared.
That's awesome. So so you're going to keep me informed about your super interesting cabin project. I'll be really, really interested to follow. So advice from a young tradesman, how can people find your podcast, Noah?
Just about everywhere podcasts are found. And I also recently started uploading some videos to YouTube. And that is basically in response to anything I get a ton of Instagram story feedback about. I started turning it into a video because I'm so bad about posting and logging stuff that I figure let's go crazy detailed, just lay it down in history. So that is also a partner channel now.
That's awesome. And obviously you can find both of our content through the PCA, through Overdrive, which is basically the Netflix of paint, business, and coding science content. And I will personally thank you for putting in the thoughtfulness, the detail, and the super high production that you do with some of this stuff. I mean, take, for example, that ornate entryway that you stripped down to bare wood and you detailed in real time every single thing that was done to that. And it was, to me, that's more interesting than whatever's on the front page of Netflix. Like when I see your story pop up on Instagram during that project, I was just like, yes, whatever he posts is going to be satisfying. And it's going to be an open-ended conversation about all this. Yeah, I love this craft through your filter, and it's really satisfying to see.
I appreciate that. And I wish I had the foresight to record that project as well as I've done the later ones. Because that one, I have like some random GoPro footage and this and that. I dropped the ball on that one, not recording that one really well. The 200-year-old plaster stairwell restoration, there's a half hour of video content in me gabbing about that one. But from now on, every really cool
that's
one,
awesome.
We'll have a project spotlight video.
All right. And if people need to get a hold of you, what's the easiest way to do that, Noah?
Instagram, advice from a young tradesman. I have Facebooks. I'm only on Facebook to watch you do this. So I'm pretty much a go-to. That's the
Awesome,
truth.
man.
I wouldn't
Steer
have
clear of
that
all the
count if
political
it weren't
stuff
for
and
you.
watch Ask a Painter.
Yeah.
Dude, that means a lot to me, man. Thank you so much. And yes, so together a number of events for master's classes, for Ask a Painter stuff, for in-person things for the next year. I would really like to do a whole nother Northeast tour because I blew through 4 states in 4 days the last time, and I did not get to do a lot of the things I wanted to. So hopefully we can organize that again. And yeah, Noah and I will give you the advice as well. Like, listen, you want more of this stuff. This show, what Noah does, whether he means it to or not, is a dog whistle to people who are really, really interested in craft, people development, and the business. And the people who like Noah's show like my show. And there's a concentric circle in that Venn diagram, and those are people that we're very interested in communicating with. So if you want to find more people to dog whistle to, please look up Advice from a Young Tradesman, share this show, get it out to as many people as possible, so we all don't have to solve these things we're talking about alone. We're all here together doing it. So Noah, I will thank you for doing this. I really do appreciate this, and I hope that we can run into each other in the early part of this year to do some wilderness cabin staining.
Me too, man. And thank you so much for what you do and having me on the Big 250. This was great.
Likewise, man. 10 more shows. It'll be my 5-year anniversary. So I'll be looking forward to another thoughtful email from you about what we can do for the 5-year anniversary show. So
You got it, man.
all right, man. Well, have a good rest of the weekend. And honestly, thank you everybody for watching and commenting and asking questions too. So all right, everybody, have a good weekend.
Bye.